Hello and welcome to this session. We are in the Power BI track at the Scottish Summit 2021. My name is Christophe, and in the next 45 minutes, I plan to talk a lot about Power BI features and also a little bit about Twitter. First, thank you for attending this presentation. If you are here live, just a note that the presentation has been pre-recorded, and if everything goes according to plan, I should be with you in the room and ready to answer your questions. I'd also like to thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity to speak today, and our sponsors who made this event possible. ScriptRunner, DQ Global, Proximo 3, Redspire, Agilicis, and Hitachi Solutions. Thank you. A few words about myself. I am a Microsoft 365 consultant. I'm interested in the whole spectrum of Microsoft 365 applications, from SharePoint to Microsoft Teams to the Power Platform and to Power BI, both from a business standpoint, like setting up an intranet or implementing collaboration, to development, for example, working with the SharePoint framework or with Teams apps. I am certified for the Power Platform and for Power BI. I've been with SharePoint a long time, actually, more than 16 years, and that would explain why my Twitter handle is Path to SharePoint. The agenda for today: first, I'd like to clarify the objectives and scope of this presentation. Then we'll quickly move to take a look at the Power BI report itself. I'm saying your report because this is not just a presentation, but it also comes with an actual Power BI template that you'll be able to crack open and to study for yourself after the presentation. After looking at the report, we're going to step back a little and understand the scenarios. So what we are trying to accomplish. Of course, we're talking about the Twitter today, but I expect that this is not going to be your common use case in your organization. So I think it's important to understand that what we're going to see is not just for social media, but can be applied to other circumstances. And then finally, we'll move back to the report itself, but this time not just to take a look at it, but to start exploring the different features and menus to see how things work. The objectives. So the first, most important, we are in the Power BI track, and I want to showcase some advanced Power BI features. So I would expect that most of you have Power BI experience. Maybe some are just getting started, have just pulled data from maybe an Excel spreadsheet or a SharePoint list, and to render a pie chart or bar. So hopefully this will be an opportunity to take it to the next level and see other kind of visuals and other ways to manipulate the data. If you have already some experience with Power BI, hopefully you'll still find some interesting tricks in what I'm going to present. And the audience for this presentation, for the visuals, I would say this is for power users. And then when we'll start looking at the queries, we'll be more in the citizen developer camp, we're going to start, so really at a high level, but we're going to start looking at formulas and code. So the idea here is that, well, don't be scared, okay? That's what we do as citizen developers. We don't code, but we are not afraid to look at it. And if you've never done that before, maybe I would make a case that Power BI is a good tool to start with. A secondary objective of the presentation is to see, so I like to show you how Twitter can help you in your Microsoft 365 journey. I know that social media haven't had a very good reputation recently, so, but what I like here is to present a more, I would say, a more optimistic view. And well, Twitter is where you're going to find the latest news. At the same time, there's a huge Microsoft community on Twitter. So if you know how to look at it, you'll find a lot of helpful information. And that's kind of what the Power BI report is here for, to help you slice and dice the data and extract the information. Okay, so let's get started. And the first step, if we want to build a report, is to get the data. Our data source here is Twitter. So it's just, as I said, it's a little bit different from a traditional data source, like, I don't know, maybe an Excel spreadsheet, where you have those rows and those columns that categorize your data. Here, we are looking at, well, this is an example of tweet. I think everybody is familiar with this. It's unstructured, and we need to find some structure from it. So the way we're going to do this, we have a few points we can grab here, a few things we can grab. The first one, metadata, we're going to use the hashtags. So the hashtags are those here, a little bit, those terms here, those key terms that you'll find in the Twitter messages, and starting with the hashtag that allow those, that are metadata that allow to categorize the information. You know, well, this is, I know this is very common now, those hashtags, they actually started with Twitter. So this is how we're going to proceed. We're going to extract those hashtags, and these will become our columns, our categories to classify the tweets. We also need to measure the importance of the information. So how do we know if a tweet is worthy or not? And to do that, what I've done is taken these metrics that you have at the bottom of each tweet that tell you, so you have four measures here. You have the number of replies, you have the number of retweets or quote retweets. So either it's a simple retweet or somebody is adding a comment. So Twitter will allow us to measure both. And then we have the number of likes. So the idea here is very simple, and I'm not a data scientist, but basically we're saying that the more replies, the more retweets, the more likes you get, the more important probably the tweet is. So this is going to be our metric. We're just going to add all those numbers, and the bigger, the more we'll want to look at those tweets. Okay, and then the last piece of information I want to grab here in this report is the username. The idea is that, okay, it's good to have a report and to know what's important, but we also want that report at some point to be actionable and follow up if we find some information, interesting information. follow up on this and maybe get back to the user and get more information. Okay, so let's move on to the report itself, or actually the reports themselves. I have two reports to show you here because I've been using this report for a while. I started using it in September 2020. This allowed me to track the Microsoft Ignite news. And so speaking of Microsoft Ignite, the next conference is coming very soon at the beginning of March. So I intend to reuse this template and this report to follow the upcoming Microsoft Ignite. So let's move on and take a look at the report itself. Okay, I have a couple windows here. Let's start with this one. Yes, so something I wanted to mention, because we're talking about those hashtags, and maybe you don't know exactly what kind of hashtags to use in this Microsoft universe. So I have, to help you, I have created this page, which is part of the Microsoft community documentation. And so you can get there, you'll find all the links, all the references at the end of this presentation. And you can get there to find a list of hashtags that are going to be helpful in the Microsoft 365 universe. So I started this page, but now it's part of the community documents, and you can see that there's a number of contributors. This page is kept up to date, and so we recently added the, for example, Microsoft Viva hashtags that you're going to see in my examples. Okay. Now let's move to the second page. This is the report I told you about from back from September, and you can actually date the report if you look at the icon here in the top left. You can see that it's the old Power BI icon. So this report is public, and you would be able to find it in the Microsoft BI community galleries. So it's a very good place where to go if you are looking for ideas for new reports. You'll find a lot of them over there. Some very nice reports, and just to give you some ideas. Again, this is public, and this is also where my report is. I'm going to open it full screen here. Okay, to allow us to take a closer look. So let's start from the top. You see here the number of tweets, which is not very important here. I have the other one we're going to look at has a lot more tweets. And also the last updated date. So I like to put this in my reports to make sure, for the users to make sure that the report is working, and to give a clue of how fresh the data is. So usually I'll have this last updated date at the top of the report. There are two main ways to get that date. Either you take the date of the latest query, so it tells you, for example, that the report has been refreshed for the last time yesterday, or you take the date of the last modified item in the data. So that is going to tell you, maybe give you a better indication of how fresh the data is. Okay, if we could, we keep moving. We have a number of slicers here. So the first one shows up as tiles, And the second one is a date slicer. But so these are actually the exact same visuals. We'll take a look when we open the report. These are the exact same visuals. You have 3 different ways to render them, either as checkboxes or as tiles or as a slicer when it's a number. And this is going to allow us to slice and dice the report. So for example, well, let's say I'm interested in Power BI. Why not? I'm interested in Power BI, so I'm going to click on that tile. And you notice that all the different visuals adjusted because they are all interconnected here. And now everything is filtered for that Power BI hashtag. So for example, and here you have this bubble chart where I put in the axis the number of retreats and here the number of likes. So the idea is, you know, the higher and the more to the right the bubble is, probably the most worthy the information. So I'm just going to hover over this and okay, so we can, I just pick one, a random one. So I'm not sure what it's about here. It was about a specific post, so let's move to another one. And so for example here, I learned that Tabular Editor version 2.12 has been released. So if I'm a big user of that tool, this is some important information. Okay, if we keep moving, this is a more traditional representation of data as a table. What I wanted to show in this specific example is the hyperlink. So this is the ID. I find some information, some interesting information. I want to take an action. So I'm going to click on the link here, and I'm going to get back to that tweet. So here you see it's from September. So same date as the report because the report has not been updated since. Okay. If I want, okay, I'm going to click back to remove the filter. And here, so this one here is the decomposition tree on the right. And this is part of all this newer, I would say, series of visuals that are available on Power BI, so AI visuals. And to finish with this report, I'm going to click on this help here, and this is going to bring me an overlay, a model dialog with some help. So here it's going to describe the different features of my report, and here a link if I need to, if I want to contact the author of the report. So what I wanted to show here is that you know, those nice experiences with model dialogues that you can find on the web, this is also something you can get with your Power BI reports. Okay, let's close this. I'm going to move quickly to the second report. It's very similar. It's just a little bit newer. You have the new Power BI logo, and it was refreshed recently. So I actually built it for this event for the Scottish Summit. Okay, so very similar. I have added here another AI feature, so we'll pop it open later. So we have the same here, the same model dialog, and something also I have added here. So let's say you started doing a number of filters here, and you don't remember exactly what you've done. You want to reset your report, so you're just going to click here on the image, and it's going to reset all the filters. Up, done. Okay, and well, the thing is, decomposition tree, when it resets, it gets it closes completely, but you can reopen it very easy. Okay, so that's for this overview of the report. As planned, I'd like to move back a little to the presentation and talk about the scenarios, about the use cases. So in this first slide, we have the standard, I would say, the standard basic scenarios we see in lots of reports where we are taking tabular data from Excel, SharePoint. It could be a Dataverse, for example, and we are rendering this on our report as the bars or pies. Okay, so a classic Power BI scenario. So now let's try to take it to the next level and see what else we can do to to get more from our report. So this slide is a little bit busy. I know. I wanted to just throw all those ideas in a slide. It's actually just to give you some maybe some directions, some ideas, but it doesn't stop there. So then the world is the limit. It's up to you to decide what you want to do with your report. So the idea is, okay, we have that base report, but now maybe people want to take to take the report on the go. Maybe you would like to have a mobile interface for that same report. Maybe you would like a nicer user experience. So that's what I've shown you with the help. The report more not flat but more interactive. Maybe some people are not very comfortable with numbers, and they prefer some natural language. So instead of presenting tables, maybe you can use. We're still talking about dynamic data, but you could present them in a more natural language. Maybe you would like to take action, not just stay with the report as a dead end, but make it actionable. So that was the link I showed you. And also, sometimes, and that's the whole power of all those AI visuals that have come to Power BI. Sometimes maybe you don't really know where to look, and you would like the tool itself to give you some insights. So what is the most important dimension? Maybe, for example, when you're in Excel, you build a matrix, and you slice, the order, but maybe you don't know what is the most important, what is the first category to slice with. So this is where you have all these different charts that can guide you, let you know where to start. So that would be for the visual part. So we were looking at the right-hand side of the screen. Now let's move to the left-hand side, to the data itself. So of course you can have some very simple and well-organized data, but my experience is that it's often not the case. And so you might have some mixed sources of data that you need to aggregate. You might have some older sources maybe that are not so clean, or maybe not consistent with the newer sources. So how can you aggregate, put together all those different sources in a way that makes sense? You might also have multiple sources. I'm thinking in my case, I work a lot with SharePoint. And usually I need to pull information from more than one SharePoint list. Last year, for example, I built a Power BI report where I was pulling information from hundreds of SharePoint lists. So how do you collect this information? You can do your regular stuff where you say new data source. It makes sense for one or two SharePoint lists, but for hundreds, this is not possible anymore. Maybe you have this unstructured content. So this would be our Twitter example that we're going to look at. Okay, so we're talking about the visuals, we're talking about the data queries. And in the end, also, once we've built this report, what we'd like is to make it reusable. Okay, so we are with a team, with a project in a specific context, but the team next door has very similar needs. So maybe that team could make use of that same report, not the same report, but by just changing a few parameters, this report could be useful for the other teams. And so we're going to see how it's going to work in a Power BI report. Okay, so before we open the report, I wanted to throw in this diagram to show you that so Power BI, when you start with Power BI, you might think of it as a flat page. You know, you have the button to get the data source, and then the buttons to get the visuals. It actually has more layers than that. So from connecting to data to transforming and shaping data, and then modeling, creating reports and dashboards, and then collaborating, sharing, reusing those reports. So those are all the different layers, all the different steps you are going to go through to build those reports. Today, we're not going to go through all the steps, but we're more going to focus on transforming. So the second one, transforming data, and the fourth one, where we create the visuals. No surprise here. This is the exact same report we were looking at. Just now, instead of being looking at it on the web, we have it open in Power BI Desktop, and we can look at how exactly the different components were built. So I'm not going to spend time on this, but again, we're not going to be able to cover everything. So I'm just going to pick a couple elements here. So let's look at this one, the tiles. And I told you that the tiles and the slider are the same as checkboxes. So it's the exact same visual that is called here a slicer. So you see, this is the one that is selected. And so what's interesting here is the way you switch from one look to the other. And so it's something you have to, you cannot you cannot invent it. I mean, you have to know about that. So the deal here is that when the orientation is horizontal, that means it's going to be rendered as tiles. And when the orientation is vertical, it's going to be rendered as checkboxes. Okay, so that's something you need to know. You have to go there in the menu. So under the paintbrush here, under formatting, general, and this is here under orientation that we can decide if we want checkboxes or if we want tiles. Okay. Another one, so we were talking about this natural language. This is actually a new visual. It's a couple months old, I think it's an after ignite visual. So this allows you to include dynamic data within a sentence. And you see, for example, here, so I just typed this sentence, but this specific element is actually calculated using a formula. And if you've already used Q&A in Power BI, you see that it's the same language that is used. So Power BI is going to understand those keywords such as highest or by or for, and you can really write a sentence to ask a question to Power BI. Also, we give this value a name here, which means that we can reuse it later. So for example, if I look at my second calculation here, you see that what I'm putting here is the highest hashtag name by popularity for name. So I'm reusing the first variable in my second form. Okay, and so of course, this is also the same as any other graphic in Power BI. This is dynamic, and it's going to be filtered by my selection. So let's click, for example, on the the newcomer here, Microsoft Viva. So we'd like to know what's going on with Microsoft Viva. I'm going to click here, and you see that that's all the visuals, including that natural language visual, have been updated, have been filtered with that value, Microsoft Viva. Okay, so we can take a quick look here, what's going on. Okay, so obviously people have, it's brand new, Microsoft Viva, but people are already talking about developing around it. Okay, so I mean, for me, if I didn't take the time to read all the tweets during the week, I can go to that report and immediately here identify something that is going to be important for my work. You see here, the total number of tweets is 6,000. So a lot more important than what we had in the order report. Okay, I'm going to finish on this visual to show you very quickly how the model dialog was built. So this is this visual, and in order to do this dialog, what we're going to use. So let me switch to view. So I didn't talk about the different panels we have here. You have all your fields you can use, and then the visualization, but you have some more panels. And in my case here, I'm going to display the selection panel and the bookmarks. So the selection panel shows me all the different pieces that make this this report, and you can see in particular that here you can so you can group, you can hide, you can show all those different pieces, and you can see that I have grouped a number of things here under dialog, and what is here is actually all my my model dialog that I would get. So let's do it. Control click. And here directly from the report, I can see my my model dialog. So all the different pieces are here in this list. And then to get that effect where I can show or hide the dialog, the trick is to use a bookmark. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a bookmark when the dialog is open. I'm going to make a bookmark when the dialog is closed. And then by switching between the two bookmarks, this is how I'm going to get that dynamic effect. I'm showing this for dialogues. Maybe you'll find also some older tutorials that are showing you, are going to show you that this can also be used for navigation. So this used to be a popular way to build navigation, to use the same trick. It's not something we're doing much anymore, and the reason is that now we have that navigation that is now built in a Power BI service. We have a navigation tool where we can build our navigation. So even if we can still use these bookmarks for navigation, it's not used that much anymore. After looking at the visuals, now we are going to take a closer look at the queries. And the way you access the queries, the door, is that single button here called Transform Data. And this is what is going to take you to the Power Query Editor, where you can transform all those data. Before we go there, there are a couple of menu items here. So I'm going to start with Edit Parameters. And this is one really key feature in Power BI. You can define parameters. And this is what is going to allow you to then build templates. So from a report you have built, imagine you have, just like I did here, you have those 4 parameters, and you'll be able to save the report as template, and the next user will be able to build his or her own solution, similar to yours, but with their own data. One reason why I'm using a template here is that, and you'll find this in the instructions, in order to access the Twitter data, Twitter is asking you to register, to build a free developer account, but you'll have to build it, and you'll have to get a token that is going to give you access to the data. So here, I'm not going to share that token. This is my personal secret token, so the plan is not to share it with you, although somehow you can see some of it in here. And so when you get the template, all of those fields are going to be empty, and you'll be able to put your own values to run your own template. So a very important here, a key feature for reuse, those parameters. Where do they come from, those parameters? How do we define them? This is where we're moving here to the back end. Let me open it here. We'll find here all our data that are used, all the queries that pull the data that are then used by the report. You see that the first group here is our same, these are our same parameters. So this is where we're defining our parameters. So you see here, just under manage parameter, I have the ability to create those new parameters. Okay, so there's a bunch of them in this report. The deal with parameters, so they are extremely useful. The issue is that it can only be a single value. Okay, so it can be a number, it can be text, but just a single value. So what happens when we need to enter a full list? So I'm thinking, for example, about the hashtags in my specific case from Twitter. So I need to provide a list of hashtags that are going to be queried. For this, unfortunately, currently we cannot use parameters, but the way we have the ability to enter them here manually in the back end, so enter data, and this allows us to build complete tables. Okay, so that's exactly what I've done here in this report. You see that we have, yes, 20 something here hashtags that I entered manually. By the way, you see also some helpful information that we have on this tab and you would have on any data you query. So I would say even as a power user, even if you're not interested in writing code, it's still worthy coming to this place and get some data quality information. Okay, so parenthesis on this. So the last thing I wanted to show you, because it's a little bit hidden, once you've created this table, how can you edit it? You need to go to the right-hand side here to the applied steps. And this is here where you have the edit button for the table. So something you have to know where to look. And you just click on it, and now this table is fully editable. So when you get this report, maybe you're not interested in Microsoft 365, but you have some specific hashtags for your organization, just replace them in this table, and it should work for you. Okay, so very quickly, what else do we have here? I was talking about code because in the Power Query, you can also write functions. You see here, you see I have a bunch of functions, and all of them are used to retrieve the data. One reason why I have function is because I need iterations. Twitter only allows you to retrieve 100 tweets at a time. So to get 6,000, you have to run 60 iterations. So say, maybe you're not going to be interested in Twitter, but maybe you're going to have in your organization, you're going to have those hundreds of SharePoint lists that you want to query. And you would do it in a similar way, but creating these functions that allow you to iterate. Okay, and so then to finish here, this is where I have the final results. So we don't have much time to explore it, but all the tweets, all the names of users I have retrieved with those queries. Okay, so again, we went very quickly. There's a lot more to explore on this data query. And one example I wanted to mention, because I find it really interesting, is that Power Query, the Power Query editor allows you to do fuzzy matching. And so this is something also you're going to encounter in your data, that sometimes there are some inconsistencies. So here I put on the left-hand side what happened for me within Twitter. You see that sometimes you have lowercase, sometimes you also have maybe some extra characters, and they don't match exactly. And this fuzzy matching is going to help you make the match. So for example, Power BI is going to be able to recognize that the three versions of Power BI, lowercase, uppercase, are actually have the exact same meaning. Okay, so we're reaching the end of the presentation. I'm going to stop with this slide, because I talked a couple of times about citizen developer, and my point was that if you never looked at code before and you want to get started, maybe Power BI could be an excellent tool for that. And so one first reason is that Power BI is a reporting tool. So usually when you start touching code, you are worried that you might break things, and maybe you're going to break the data source, your database, and stuff like that. This is not going to happen with Power BI, because all you do is take the data, you never make changes to the original data. So that's the case I'm making today. That could be a good way to get started being a citizen developer. Just a side note, there's actually a bigger risk when you start dealing with Power BI. You know, if you're in SharePoint, for example, you know that everything is controlled by the user's permission. So if there's a list you don't have access to, so you're sure that, or other people don't have access to, you're sure that it's secure. Power BI is working in a different way because it doesn't carry on permissions. So this is the part you'll need really to be to worry about, is that when you pull data, if you start working more with Power BI, make sure that you're sharing this data with the right people, because the tool itself is not going to allow you to preserve permissions. So I put a couple of useful links at the end of the presentation. You'll find them in the slideshow. I'll let you explore them on your own. There are links from me and also links from Microsoft. Some very good tutorials from Microsoft. But maybe the important point here is that you have the link where you'll be able to go download the report I showed you today and download the instructions. Okay, so the Microsoft resources.